Emily woke up before the alarm, just as she usually did. The soft light, coming through the curtains, painted the bedroom in warm tones, and for a brief moment, everything felt exactly the way it was supposed to feel. Calm, familiar, safe. She lay still, listening to the quiet rhythm of the house, the distant sound of a car passing by, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Beside her, Mark slept peacefully, his back turned toward her, one arm resting where she had fallen asleep hours earlier. She watched him for a few seconds, noticing how comfortable his presence had become over the years, less exciting than before, perhaps, but solid, reliable. Emily slipped out of bed and padded into the kitchen. Coffee first. Always coffee first. She moved through the space with practiced ease, her mind already organizing the day ahead: work emails, a grocery run, dinner plans, ordinary things, good things. When Mark joined her a few minutes later, he kissed her cheek without thinking, exactly the way he always did. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, smiling. They stood together by the counter, sipping coffee, sharing small talk about the weather and the news. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt wrong. And yet, as Emily watched the steam rise from her mug, she felt a strange, quiet thought pass through her mind, so soft she almost ignored it. If this was happiness, it was a quiet kind, the kind that didn't ask questions. Later that morning, Emily went upstairs to put away laundry. It was a task she did without thinking, folding clothes while her mind wandered freely. Mark's dresser drawer stuck slightly when she opened it, catching on something inside. She sighed and pulled harder. That was when she saw it. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. A small velvet box, dark blue, tucked beneath a stack of neatly folded shirts. Her hands froze mid-motion. Slowly, she picked it up, her fingers light, almost cautious. Emily already knew what it was before she opened it. Inside rested a ring. Elegant, delicate, not flashy, but undeniably expensive. A thin band with a single stone that caught the light even in the dim room. It wasn't her ring. Her breath caught, sharp and sudden. She stared at it longer than necessary, as if the answer might appear if she waited long enough. Maybe it was old. Maybe it belonged to someone else before her. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation, but she already knew her jewelry. She knew every piece Mark had ever given her. Carefully, she slipped the ring onto her finger. It didn't fit, too small. Emily closed the box and sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. Her heart raced, but her face remained calm, almost numb. She placed the box exactly where she had found it, folded the remaining clothes, and closed the drawer. From downstairs, she heard Mark laugh at something on his phone. Emily stood up, smoothing her shirt, carrying a secret she never asked for and pretending, just for now, that nothing had changed. The rest of the day passed as if it were ordinary, but Emily noticed everything differently. Every sound felt louder. Every silence felt heavier. Mark came home later than usual. Not late enough to be suspicious, just late enough to register. "Traffic," he said casually, dropping his keys on the counter. She nodded. Of course, at dinner, he talked about work, about a meeting that ran longer than expected, about a colleague who wouldn't stop complaining. Emily listened, responding at the right moments, smiling when she was supposed to, but her mind was elsewhere. She watched his hands as he spoke, the same hands that used to hold hers across the table, the same hands that now rested comfortably, confidently, as if nothing had shifted. Later that night, Emily noticed small details she might have ignored before: his phone screen lighting up and turning dark again. A message he didn't mention, a glance at the clock. None of it proved anything. That was the problem. In bed, Mark fell asleep quickly. Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in her head. She asked herself questions she was afraid to answer. Had he always been like this, or had she simply stopped paying attention? She turned slightly, facing his back, listening to his breathing. It sounded steady, unbothered. Emily wondered how something so small, a ring hidden in a drawer, could suddenly make everything feel uncertain. She told herself she was overthinking. That doubt was easy to create and hard to erase. Still, as she closed her eyes, one thought refused to leave her. If there was nothing to hide, why hide it at all? Over the next few days, Emily became an expert at creating explanations. Maybe the ring was a gift for someone else, a family member, a co-worker. Maybe it had been there for months, forgotten, meaningless. She repeated these ideas silently, as if saying them enough times might make them true. She remembered how Mark used to surprise her, how thoughtful he had been at the beginning. He was still kind, still present. Wasn't that enough? At work, she caught herself staring at her screen, rereading the same sentence over and over. Her coworkers laughed nearby, their voices distant. Everything felt slightly out of focus. That evening, Mark mentioned a weekend trip he might need to take for work. Just one night, he said. Nothing serious. Emily smiled. Okay. Inside, her chest tightened. She hated herself for the suspicion growing in her mind. She had always believed trust was a choice, something you practiced daily. She didn't want to become someone who searched for hidden meanings, who read between every line. Still, when Mark went to shower, she stood in front of the dresser again, the drawer, the ring. She didn't open it this time. Instead, she thought about the woman she had been when she married him. Confident, certain. She remembered believing that love meant safety. Now, uncertainty sat quietly between them, invisible but present. When Mark returned, wrapping a towel around his waist, he smiled at her the same way he always had. You okay? He asked. Yes, she replied too quickly. She turned off the light, choosing darkness over answers, telling herself a story she desperately wanted to believe. Silence had never felt so loud. Emily noticed it during breakfast, in the pauses between words. During dinner, in the way conversations ended too soon. The ring remained hidden, but its presence filled every room. Mark seemed unaware, perhaps too aware. He avoided her eyes more often now, his attention drifting elsewhere. Emily wondered if he could feel the distance growing, or if it existed only in her mind. One evening, they sat on opposite ends of the couch, a movie playing quietly in the background. Emily didn't know what it was about. She wasn't watching. Her thoughts circled endlessly, returning to the same question. How do you ask something you're afraid to hear the answer to? She wanted him to notice, to ask what was wrong, to make the first move. He didn't. When Mark finally spoke, it was about something trivial. A new project at work, a restaurant he wanted to try. Emily nodded, her patience thinning. She realized then that the ring wasn't just about betrayal, it was about everything that had gone unsaid for too long. The distance she had ignored, the conversations postponed. That night, as they prepared for bed, Emily watched him place his phone on the nightstand, screen down. Her heart pounded. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision settle in. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow, the silence would end. Emily didn't plan her words. They came out before she could stop them. I found something, she said quietly, standing in the doorway of the bedroom. Mark looked up from his laptop. What? She walked to the dresser, opened the drawer, and placed the velvet box on the bed between them. This, she said. For a moment, he said nothing, his eyes fixed on the box, his jaw tightening slightly. Why were you looking through my things? He asked. Emily felt a sharp sting, but she stayed calm. That's not the question, Mark sighed, rubbing his face. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, she said, her voice steady but firm. He hesitated. Too long. It was a mistake, he finally said. Something I didn't plan? Emily nodded slowly, absorbing his words. Was it for me? No. The truth landed heavily between them. Mark spoke quickly then, offering explanations that felt incomplete. A connection, a moment. Something that didn't mean anything. Until it did. Emily listened without interrupting. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. When he finished, the room felt unbearably quiet. You didn't just hide the ring, she said softly. You hid yourself. Mark reached for her hand. She pulled away. I don't know what happens next, she continued, but I know I can't pretend anymore. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in weeks, and Emily realized something important. The confrontation wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The days that followed felt slow and heavy, like walking through thick air. Emily stayed. For now. Not because she was sure, but because she needed time to understand what she felt beyond the shock. Mark tried awkwardly, imperfectly, to reconnect. Apologies filled the space where certainty used to be. But something had shifted. Emily noticed how much of herself she had silenced over the years, how often she had chosen comfort over honesty. The ring hadn't created the cracks, it had only revealed them. One afternoon, she took a walk alone. The air was cool, the sky pale and quiet. She breathed deeply, feeling something unfamiliar rise within her. Clarity. She loved Mark. That hadn't disappeared. But love, she realized, wasn't enough when it asked her to disappear too. She returned home calmer than she had felt in weeks. That night, they talked not about the ring, not about forgiveness, but about her, about how small she had felt, about how invisible. Mark listened, really listened. Emily didn't know where they would end up, but she knew something important had changed. She had found the other side of love, and it belonged to her. Emily stood in front of the mirror, fastening her coat. She looked the same as she always had, but she felt different. Mark watched her quietly. I want to do better, he said. I know, she replied, but this isn't just about you. She stepped outside. The morning air cooled against her skin. The world felt open, in a way it hadn't before. Emily didn't know if her marriage would survive. That decision would come later. What she knew now was simpler. She would no longer ignore her voice. The ring remained in the drawer, but it no longer defined her story. She walked forward, choosing honesty, choosing herself, keeping only what truly belonged to her.